Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. Well, it's clear to me from our earlier emails that you want to re-platform your current commerce site on Contentful. I'd like to get a better understanding of your current pain points. So can you share with me the key challenges of working with your current CMS?
Yeah, so my biggest obstacle is that every time me or someone on the content team wants to make a change, we have to contact the development team, and that just really slows us down. I mean, how are we supposed to be creative and do our actual jobs of creating content when we have such a broken system?
Well, due to the way that our CMS is set up, it's not easy for us to make any changes. We now have a big backlog of requests, and the person who chose page core has already left. Don't blame me.
Okay, there's no need to play the blame game. Jim, to circle back to your original question, we actually have 3 different CMSs. We had a homemade one that was really slow and buggy, so we bought another one. But that one ended up not having all the features we needed, so we bought another one. Like Nikoo said, it takes us a long time to publish new content, and we have to recreate content for every new social channel and every new device.
Oh my God, it's copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. It's all we do all day long.
Also, the site is painfully slow. That means we get low conversion and poor search results. And really, we don't have any way of enforcing our workflow to make sure the content gets approved before it gets posted. I just want to leverage the synergies of our talent base.
Yeah, to Rob's point, I have individual content creators emailing me, Slacking me, texting me to approve their content that's being created in all different places. I mean, in Google Docs, in Word, in PowerPoint. It's just a terrible workflow.
And it's not scalable at all.
Jim, just so we're on the same page, we didn't choose these systems, we inherited them. But these problems are costing us money. So far, we've lost $237,422 in sales and 34 cents. And that is totally unacceptable.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, number 1, it's slow for your team to create content. Number 2, you have to recreate content for every new channel and every new device. And then finally, you don't have any kind of content approval workflows. Now, of course, this is hurting your sales. Is that right?
Yep, you got it. So what do you think? Can Contentful help us? Can we hit the ground running?
Yeah, can we pay you to do a quick POC?
Come on, POC sites take forever to set up and cost a fortune.
Actually, with Contentful, they don't. The key to all of this is creating the right content model. If you nail the content model, everything else follows.
That makes sense to me. Why don't we talk again in a week and figure out what the next steps are? Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
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 Hi, everyone. I hope you don't hold our poor acting skills against us. My name is Nikoo, just like the character that you saw in the video, but I'm not a content creator. I'm actually a senior instructional media producer here at Contentful. So although we put that skit together to entertain you, the concerns and challenges we heard the characters convey are very real. So let's recap a little of what we heard. We heard that it's slow for content teams to make changes. We heard that multiple content management systems are in use, requiring content teams to use multiple interfaces. We heard that they have to recreate content for every device and channel. And we heard that there are no well-defined content workflows, making it hard to get the right content published at the right time. So to kick things off, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jim Ambras, who's our Manager of Training Delivery.
Hey, thanks, Nikoo. Most of you here at this session are software developers, and I've been trying to think, what's the most important message I can give you today? And this is it. Content modeling is the key to a successful Contentful-based project. It's not an afterthought. It's not a second priority. It needs to be your single highest priority. By nailing the content model, number 1, you get content reuse. No more cutting and pasting of content. Number two, you'll be able to bring new features and capabilities to your customers faster than you ever have before. And finally, number three, you'll have a truly future-proof application. Any content your team creates will be usable in the future on any kind of digital device and any kind of channel.
So today we're going to give you a rundown of how to get started with content modeling with Contentful. The agenda for today is I'm going to go over content modeling basics, and Jim is going to go over how to build a content model. We're also going to have a short Q&A session at the end, so make sure you jot down your questions and save them for that Q&A session. When learning object-oriented programming, you probably heard the mantra, find the objects, as you were building out the object model in your application. In content modeling, it's find the chunks of content. It's all about creating a model of structured content where these chunks are pure content that can be rendered on any type of device and any type of digital channel. So the key to structured content is to separate content from context. Think of content as all of your chunks of data. So here we have an example of a New York Times article. The content is the title, the subtitle, the image, etc. The context is the interface that holds that data. The context here for the New York Times article could be a mobile phone, a desktop, a newspaper. But if you think even in broader terms, it could be digital signage, virtual assistants, wearables, or more. Let's talk about some content modeling vocabulary. These are the terms we use at Contentful, so they might be slightly different from what you might hear if you use another CMS. At Contentful, we refer to a content model as the overall architecture of your content. It divides up your contents project into chunks we call content types. So each of these that you see here is a content type, making up our content model. A content type is a structure or container for a piece of content. A content type is made up of fields. Fields, also known as attributes, represent different properties or characteristics for a piece of content. So each of these here is a field. You can assign different data types to fields. These are all of the data types you can assign to a field in Contentful. The three data types that you'll probably use the most will be text, media, and reference. We'll cover media and reference fields in more detail in a second. An entry is a piece of content based on a content type. You might think of an entry as an instance of that content type. You might have hundreds or thousands of entries based on a single content type. So here we're looking at an entry for the content type, topic, author. A reference is a link between two content types via a field, specifically a reference field. A reference creates a relationship between two content types. So here we have a content type, topic, article, that includes a reference field to the content type, topic, author. So when content creators are then creating an entry and they encounter a reference field, they have the option to either create a new entry or link to an existing one. Here, the content author is linking to an existing entry for the content type, topic, author. Finally, an asset is any digital media file that has been uploaded to Contentful, such as the image you see here, video, audio files, PDFs, etc. Assets can be embedded in content types via media fields. This content type here has a media field. They've called it featured images, and it'll allow content authors to link to existing assets or create new assets right from this field. The last important thing we need to review is topics and assemblies. In Contentful, we refer to content types that contain pure content as topics and content types that control how content is primarily displayed as assemblies. Assemblies contain topics, but assemblies also often contain other assemblies. So let's take a look at some examples. This is an entry based on the content type page, which is an example of an assembly. It doesn't contain any content of its own. Instead, the primary purpose is to control how content is displayed on the page. It's divided into three sections. So in this top section, we have what's called a flexible assembly because it allows content authors to move pieces of content around. So as you can see, the content author is moving entries around. In the middle, we have what's called a fixed assembly because it's locked down and only allows content authors to link to a single entry. So this enforces more governance. And then in the bottom section, we have another flexible assembly that again allows the content author to move pieces of content around. Now let's look at a topic that's actually embedded in this assembly. So if I scroll to the middle, here is an entry for topic campaign. So this is an entry based on the content type called topic campaign. And as you can see, it's made up of fields that content authors have to fill out. So there's no reference fields here. These are all fields that are filled with content. So this is the behind the scenes of what the content type looks like for that assembly. As you can see, it's made up of mostly reference fields. We have a one-to-many reference field that makes up that flexible assembly. Then we have a one-to-one reference field that makes up that fixed assembly, and then another one-to-many reference field that makes up the bottom flexible assembly. In contrast, this is how the content type was set up for the topic. It's made up of fields, but as you can see, there are no reference fields. This makes sense because our topic was pure content. The last thing I want to mention is that assemblies are very powerful. They can be used for a variety of purposes. We saw an example of a page assembly, but they can also be used for image carousels, hero banners, or any other element where you want to control how content is displayed. Okay, now that you have a sense of some content modeling basics, I'm going to hand it back to Jim to show you how to build a content model.
Okay, so there are 3 key steps in a successful content modeling process. Number 1, and this is crucial, get all of the stakeholders in a room together, and that includes developers, includes business owners, product managers, designers, and of course the content team, and have them agree upon a common set of objectives and KPIs. Now, it seems pretty obvious, but you'd be amazed how often this is not done. Okay, number 2, build out the content model, design it in 2 phases. In phase 1, sketch it out in whatever tool you find comfortable. That could be a whiteboard, sketchpad, could be post-it notes. At Contentful, we use Miro, which is an online collaborative whiteboarding tool, and I'll be showing you that later. And then after you've done that, after you've sketched out the design, then actually build it in the Contentful web app. And then finally, for step 3, have your content team sit down and build out sample content in the web app. Do this before you write a single line of front-end code. What you'll often find is the content model that you thought was perfect is not quite working for your content team. So with their feedback, revise the model and iterate until both you and your content team are in agreement that the model works for both parties. And only then should you begin the actual implementation of the application itself. Okay, so let's do a quick simulation of this process and assume that we've already done step 1. We'll start by firing up Miro. We've created a custom template specifically for content modeling. The blue objects represent content types. And then the yellow stickies represent fields. You can see we have different field types for the different fields within Contentful. And we've also included a little starter template here so you can see how it all fits together. So let's create a new model from scratch. So the first thing we'll do is we'll select one of these content types, we'll duplicate it, and then give it a name. Well, that was pretty easy. Okay, so next, let's add a field to this new content type. Same kind of thing, we'll just duplicate one of these stickies here, and then edit the name. Now let's make some more room for some additional fields, since we'll have quite a few in this landing page. You can do this top-down, start with your top-level assemblies, or you can do it bottoms-up, start with your low-level topics. As you can see here, we're doing a top-down design, so I've already defined the top-level fields of this landing page. And now let's start actually building out the lower-level content types that we're going to link to. And we'll start with SEO metadata. Earlier, Nikoo talked about topics and assemblies. Assemblies are reusable visual components, whereas topics are just pure structured content. So in this case, the landing page is clearly a assembly, but the SEO metadata is a topic. So let's change its color to green to visually differentiate assemblies and topics. And now we'll just start building out the SEO metadata content type itself. I think you'll find that most fields tend to either be text fields or reference fields in content types. And as you use this template, you find that it's actually pretty easy to just find a nearby field, whether it's a text field or a reference field, just duplicate it and give it a new name. So we're now done with the fields of the SEO metadata content type. Now it's time to start linking reference fields in the landing page to the various content types that they point to. So we'll start with this. So we have the SEO metadata field in the landing page, and that will point to the SEO metadata content type. We'll make the arrow black to indicate that this is a one-to-one reference. So I'll keep on working here, and eventually we'll have a full content model built in Miro. And again, the blue are assembly content types, the green are topics, purely structured content, and we're going to use red arrows to indicate one-to-many references, black arrows, one-to-one references. The great thing about using a tool like this is that, of course, you can keep on evolving this model as your project continues. So if you've done this on a whiteboard, sketchpad, bunch of sticky notes, they're really not very portable. And then secondly, while I'm doing this demo solo, you could have a group of people distributed around the world collaborating and building out this model at the same time. So we've now completed phase 1 of step 2. We've built out a visual design of the content model. Next, let's actually implement the model in the Contentful web app. So we'll start by adding our first content type. Now, just like in the Miro design session, we could do this top-down. We could start defining our top-level assembly content types and work our way down, or we could actually do the opposite. We could start with the lower-level topic content types and then work our way up. Whatever works best for you makes sense. Again, I'm going to just go top-down and start with the product landing page, and we'll start adding some fields to that. And as part of this exercise, you want to make sure that you add as many validations as possible, because you want to give the content authors, when they actually get a chance to try this, the closest experience possible to what they'll actually be doing when you build out the application. Now, one downside to the top-down approach is that as you start adding reference fields to these high-level content types, these assemblies, you actually can't point them to anything yet because you actually haven't defined the content types they point to. So that's like one advantage of the bottoms-up approach, is that you can start with the lower-level content types, and then as you go up, you can point to the newly created content types and then add validation rules there and so on. So again, it's up to you in terms of whatever model works best for you. Sometimes you might want to have a hybrid approach of both top-down and bottoms-up. Now for content types like, let's say, value propositions, that's a assembly, and it's a container that points to one or more individual topics. So it's really important, again, in terms of the content authoring experience, to put in the proper validations to make it easy for the content authors to kind of not make mistakes here. And typically, in terms of value propositions, you usually have 3 or 4 on a row. You never have 1, you don't have more than 4. So in this case, we're just going to put in a validation rule to force the authoring experience to always choose between 2 and 4 individual value propositions. And now we're done. Okay, so we have 19 content types, and most of them are really fairly simple, other than like SEO metadata has a lot of fields and so on, and the top level landing page does. So what's the next step? Now that we've built this out in the web app, what do we do next? fire up your favorite IDE and start writing the code? No, we're not going to do that. Remember that step 3 was getting your content authoring team, have them sit down and actually create sample content in the web app. Okay, you now want to test your content model with content authors before you've written a single line of code. Even better, before you do that, test it out yourself. Sit down and start creating a landing page. Create the SEO metadata, create the various value propositions, the headlines, and so on. And try it top down, try it bottoms up, but you do a full life cycle test of the content creation process. And you might discover you want to make some changes before you actually test this out with your content authoring team. So we're all set. And at this point, what we can do is let's click on the References tab, hit the Validate All button, and make sure that we've passed all the validation rules. We have. So now we can hit Publish All, and we've done our first test of publishing a landing page. And again, we haven't written a single line of front-end code yet, but we are testing the content authoring experience. We need to get feedback. You'll find that you rarely get this right the first time, so you can incorporate this feedback in the content model, iterate on that, and then when both parties agree the model works, you can build out your application. Okay, so we hope you found this session worthwhile. We have a few more minutes left, so Nikoo and I would love to answer any of your questions.